All right. Welcome to the third episode of my podcast. Today I have one of my dear friends that I've known for a very long time, Sal Vitale, and he is a crystal healer, Reiki master teacher, sound healer, and he also does house healings and clearings and is an animal communicator and so much more. And I will post everything he does in the show notes at the end of the episode. So, Sal, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here and that you're my first guest. It's very wonderful. It's wonderful to me that you are coming on and speaking about your loss or losses, multiple losses. Um, so you had a loss of a girlfriend at the age of 20. Can you share a bit about what happened?
Yeah, I was in summer school and I actually convinced her to go to this dead show at Louisville, Kentucky. And she went with her friend, some woman and some guy friend, and um, told her mom that she was at a sleepover in Maryland. And so I was to go to the um, payphone. This was back in 1990. So went to the payphone over at a shopping center to receive the phone call from her because that's when she was going to check in and say hey and let me know whatever. And she was a little bummed about seeing so many couples there and wishing I was there, and had some bunk L or something, bunk acid, and she wasn't feeling that good from it. And so, I even said something, I mentioned like how she should just rest, and can't you just rest and like whatever. And I was like, would you, rather rest or be wrapped around a tree? And she was just like, no, I got to get back. We have to get back. I told my mom we're at this thing. And so left it at that and went home. And then the next morning I had a note on my car from a cop saying to call my dad. And so I called my dad, and he was um, they were having a party for my sister's graduation, and I kind of had the vibe that he was going to be telling me my grandma died or something. Like I thought I thought it was really weird that a cop would, because I didn't have a phone at the time for some reason, because I was in summer school, and I was at a house. I was staying in my friend's room when he didn't have to be there. So, and they didn't have a phone. Uh, and so he told me Ashley died, and I was just like, like kind of had that, and he repeated it again or something, and I was just like, Ashley died, what? And I can remember just snot pouring down in tears, and ended up taking a ride, driving around, just kind of, I don't know, releasing it, screaming, screaming in the car or something, yelling, just not really being able to process. And I went to some friend's house, and I remember listening to like one of the Grateful Dead's first albums. I don't even think we put on a bootleg. I feel like it was like an album, which was weird because we usually listen to bootlegs. Um, and they all were trying to be very supportive. Just holding space, giving me hugs, or talking, or just trying to help process. I mean, it was a lot of shock at first. I remember being just in shock, really, like not knowing how to process it, which took a while, and I always spiraled back around to it, no matter how healed I thought I was or how much I processed.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not really given the tools to actually process death at that age. It's not something that's really spoken about that much, so it's really hard to know what avenue to take to heal, I feel anyway. How
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I always agree. I became very open to any kind of anything on spirituality or like life and death and why we're here, or
Yeah,
it just shattered my, even though death is inevitable, it's not one of those things you expect at that age.
yeah,
Um and I realized too that I've, surely have pushed my limits of existence of driving or nodding off while driving at that. Before that,
mm,
after that, I became more aware of like, no, I'm going to stop and rest, or I'm going to wake up, make sure I'm awake. I'm not going to mess around anymore and all that. Realizing, kind of want to be here, but also felt guilty for being here. That
yeah.
was a hard thing to get over. I'd be like, "Oh, she can't be here, so and have fun, so I shouldn't have fun."
Right, right,
Until somebody probably talked that logic into me, or I figured it out myself, like, "No, what would she want? She'd want me to be happy."
right.
And so don't sit here and, suffer just sh you know, because I don't know what she's going through, or yeah.
Yeah, I understand. What was your process of healing over time? Because I know when I met you a long time ago, you were still going through a process of healing with her, and that was quite some time after she had passed already.
Yeah, I noticed, and in looking back, I can remember that was part of my story. Like, that was part of something I would bring up to almost describe myself in a way, weird way. Like, and then so definitely still carrying the past with me and not letting it go. And time definitely helps. And finding, reconnecting with amusement and what I love doing, and learning, or friends or music, and not feeling guilty to dance to music anymore, or have fun and actually have the fun at it, and just realize that's her path. I feel like we have a few outs, and that was whatever she came here to learn or do and experience was done for right now, and she'd be back at some point if she wants. And that's
Mhm.
just, and I feel like I was told by somebody that I would meet her again in a body, which I never necessarily knew who that was. um, and had different speculations on different kids that I've met, that could have been her, and maybe didn't have the psychic tools at the time to really be certain or something, but it didn't matter. And at some point, um, especially, I mean, I think because I realized it would affect different girlfriends too, exes, that if I was honoring her too much or something, like a shrine of her, whatever leftover pictures or little things I had that I would hold on to and have a hard time letting go of, I would
Mhm.
start trying to let go of that stuff and give it away, or burn it, or move it along. And even I was surprised when I was in psychic school with my teacher telling me, when I was getting a healing from her, probably, and I was probably already 45 at this point, that I still had a couple ex-girlfriends that I was still holding on to in my heart space, and that I really needed to let them go, even the dead one. And I was just like, damn, because I never really talked to her about that. I
Mhm.
don't. So for her to just pull that out and be like, you have a dead ex-girlfriend in your space, I was like, huh,
Yeah.
holy cow. Okay. So I tried to do, I think, more work on really allowing her the freedom to move on and fully give her energy back. And I guess that's what I used to do too, is try to give energy back, try to get my energy back. and be conscious about sending it off. Anything that's yours, love, jealousy, whatever it is that's yours, if it's yours, just sending back and calling my energy back, anything that's mine. And that was one of the first methods I remember learning. And then just pulling, I guess now I use roses for a lot of stuff, whether it's pain or even grief.
Mhm.
Imagining a rose that's outside my space that can vacuum out these things and blow it up and send it back to the universe or down a grounding cord or something like that. And that works with pulling people's energy out of your space, is imagining a rose that just can kind of vacuum their energy out and send it to them, blow it up or give it to them, and then use a rose to pull your own energy back and kind of do a separation. It's good to separate with anybody, really, in my opinion.
Mhm.
But that was good because that opened up to where I was ready to connect with Heather after knowing her since 2003, but that was in 2017. So it was somewhere in there. I don't even know what year the healing was, but it was probably just the year before that we connected, and now I'm married to her, and probably did need to get everybody out of my space that way,
Mhm.
fully present and available for such things as marriage.
Yes. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realize that that was so recently, like that you experienced um your teacher saying that you still were connected to someone who had passed as well, that was your girlfriend. That's
Yeah,
wild.
I wasn't really aware of it because up until then I thought I was pretty good about that. I stopped calling her, I used to call her into shows, and I didn't necessarily care if I danced with anybody. I would just have her dancing with me or something. That was back in the 90s, but it's
Yeah.
what still a memory as far as like there was a lot of shifts in 2000 that I really was determined to let go as best as possible. And
Hmm.
um, yeah, and getting rid of stuff like a crystal that I definitely up until then I would have never gotten rid of, but then being like, no, this is a really prime example of like a physical representation of something I'm holding on to honor this person. So, you know,
Yes. So true. And I don't think people really think about releasing people that have passed in their lives. I've read a lot of things about how if we aren't letting people go, they don't actually go to the other realms that they're supposed to be in. Like if we're in such deep grief and we're holding on to them, that they can't move from, help me with the words, to another dimension.
right. Yeah, I think they just lose fragments of themselves, like, and that's one of the things I became aware of when we did an astral class and we went to the moon and looked back on the earth and kind of put this purple energy over the earth, and saw where spots lit up that we still had soul fragments and soul parts stuck. And
Hmm.
I was just like, whoa, I have a lot of soul fragments all over the place, like all different countries and all different places. And thought about that, like, well, some could be from dying suddenly or something and not having all of you move along, and some I would think would be from people keeping you there because of
Mhm.
their inability to let go.
Yeah.
um Same with animals. I feel like animals stick around till you're ready to let them go. They could have
Mhm.
gone like months before, and they're just like, well, he doesn't seem ready.
Yeah.
Till you finally come to terms with it, like, if you'd like to leave your body, is what I first used to tell her. Like, you have that ability to leave your body and it's cool. But he'd always be like, "Nah, I know you still want to try to fight this. I know you still want to try to heal me. It ain't happening, but we'll I'll stick around." And
Hmm. That was
it's not a
quite a journey.
sadness. What's that?
That was quite a journey with Harpua.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because my vet wanting to put him down right away. As soon as he realized he had this cancerous sarcoma in his jaw, he's just like, "You want me to just put him down right now?" And I was like, "Dude, are you effing kidding me? Like,
Right.
no." I got this. Till he couldn't take down a slurry anymore. And then I was like, oh, damn, dude, you can't even swallow the slurry. Like, shit.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like Frodo had a really hard time with Harpua's passing. That was an interesting situation. Do you want to go into that at all?
Sure. Yeah. Frodo was really cool with his passing. I mean, because I mean, as far as talking about getting soul parts back, I was getting, he had passed away after going to a horse place, trying to help the horses heal. And I remember playing one of my singing bowls, I think not the crystal bowl, one more like this. And he started howling with it like he did sometimes for ambulance and stuff. He'd be like, and do his whole thing. And I didn't make much of it at the time, but I realized afterwards he went downhill as soon as we came home and was like couldn't move, and it was hard to figure out what was wrong with him. And it was too late for my vet was like, oh, we're kind of done right now, you know, we're going home. And I was just like, oh, dude. And um and I remember in the morning, I stayed with him and tried to and did as much as I could with healing and with calling in people. There was a remote healing site for animals that did it for free. I can't remember their name, but I had called them in, and he had people. But I remember when he puked, there was bone in his puke. So I think
Mhm.
he was chewing on a bone and swallowed it when he was howling, and that obstructed something and messed him up. And I think it messed up his circulation or his heart or um, yeah. But it was definitely something he got into at the horse horse ranch, whatever you call them, ranch. Sounds right.
Yeah.
But what was cool is afterwards, that was in 2008, and I had been getting soul retrievals from my friend Kathy Gana, who's a shamanic practitioner. And there was one scenario where there was all these, she needed to get back like a few of my soul parts. And they're always different, the different journeys that are taken to the lower world or upper world to get soul parts back. But this one was in particular one where Frodo happened to join her animal totems, her wolf, and uh, I I remember her wolf really well, and but her cow maybe. And there's a few different animals that she would journey with to help support her on the journey. And Frodo was the one who led it, and which I always thought was so beautiful, because there was a lot of trickster energy going on, and she described it like the Demeter energies from Harry Potter, like as far as there was these dark energies that weren't wanting her to find my parts that were the correct ones. And so Frodo went up to these like egg-like shaped things and would be like, nope, that's not him. And then would go to another and be like, yeah, that's him, you know, and like knew me, and would be like, oh no, that's not him. Yeah. And so found three of my soul parts, and that was really badass. Um, because it really was recent to after his passing. And yeah, that was awesome. I mean,
Mhm.
because I'd gotten so many soul parts back over the years, but that's the only time that happened.
Yeah, yeah. Between the two of us, we've lost a lot of fur kids, fur babies. A lot of our dogs have passed away, and I've been really close to your dogs, and I felt really heartbroken when they've passed. Mainly Jabu really affected me. I don't know if you remember right before he passed, um, he jumped into the back of my car when I was about to head back to Texas. And I was just like, "What are you doing, Jabu?" And I had to like get him out of the car and he went back into the car. And I'm like, "Okay, you can't come with me, obviously. You have to stay here." And I got him out again. And I'm just like, that's strange because he's never done that before. And I've been to your place so many times. And in hindsight, I thought that it was him saying goodbye almost because he knew that he was about to transition because I think it was within the next week that he ended up passing. So that was a really interesting situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jabu was very, very special in many ways.
Yeah, he was for all our battles with just trying to get him to sit for food. He was amazing. He was there. I've never had another dog be so good with traveling and uh, being at shows and then getting to the car and people being like, "Damn, you had a dog in your car that whole time?" I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, chilling it." Whereas our poo would Cujo the window and be like, "Get away from the car,"
Yeah.
and freak out.
Yeah.
But that was a sudden one. That sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. That was really hard.
He was stubborn about coming inside, and it was the first spring night. It was May 26th, but it was one of the first nights that was really warm around here, like warm to where I kind of blew it off that that he was refusing to come inside, and I was still trying to get him to come inside because he's never spent the night outside. He always comes back in at some point, but he had the cone of shame to stop licking his wound that wouldn't heal, and he
Yeah.
was mad about that. And so I had all these mental things like, well, he's mad at me about the cone. It's nice out. He's being extra stubborn today, and just kind of. But then when he didn't come back in the morning, I was like, what? I did recycling to try to get him be like, because he always comes back to go anywhere. I know just opening the door was the way to trick him to get into the car and be like, yeah, sorry, I just wanted you to come inside. And um, but then some bikers came by the house. I did some work with Archangel Michael and was asking for help from everybody to try to figure out where the hell he is. And some bikers came by and were like, "Oh, that's your dog's up on the trail." And I was like, "Oh, good." They're like, no, it's not good." And I was like, "What?" So
Yeah.
he had gotten hit by a car. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's the things with the sudden dying. Is like with our Pua, there was sort of that working towards it and then helping him cross, which was really beautiful. I
Hmm.
remember who was actually in the room when he did get put down, and you could really feel the energy leave once he officially left. Like that was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Frodo didn't have much time. I didn't know that he was going to die that night, but he had a lot of different problems throughout the years. He had a bronchopneumonia at a young age that really kind of almost took him out, and
Hmm.
a lot of different stuff. And I guess that's the thing with the suddenness. There's like some guilt, like with Ashley, I felt guilty that I talked her into going to the show. Like if I didn't talk her into going, she probably would have never gone. Like if I
Hmm.
wasn't like, "Oh, I'm gonna go, you want to meet me there?" Like, and then me not be able to go because I was in summer school, and the dude was like, "No, dude, you can't go anywhere." Like,
Hmm.
um, and then with that, you just, yeah, you regret anything, being unkind or
Yeah.
unspoken stuff, or yeah.
Yeah, that is hard. I've noticed that with the sudden deaths as well as it's just really hard to process them because there are so many things like what ifs and regrets. Those are, I feel like, one of the first things that come up like immediately after the loss. It makes it so hard. So hard for so many. I've noticed that with a lot of people where they're just sitting in that regret and wishing for it to be different, obviously. But yeah, I mean, you've lost your mother as well. Was that process different because you knew it was coming?
Yeah, I thought it was coming at any point from when, she fell a few times in 2018, but when she fell on December 13th in 2018, she was in hospice and she had the blood between her brain and skull, and like, you know, I definitely it could be happening that this visit in January. Um, it could be happening my visit in April. It could be happening at any given visit over the next times, and just never knew. And somehow she still was under 24-hour care for all those years. And I even came across my Mother's Day card to her. Might have even been 2020, either 20 or 21. And I even told her in the letter, I said all this nice stuff and beautiful stuff, and sorry for any times of this negative vibes or anything, but love you, appreciate you, blah blah blah. And I
Mm,
was like, sorry. And I don't know if I said sorry, but I acknowledged the fact that this is the last Mother's Day that I'll be able to wish her Mother's Day, and while she's in a body. She'd
mm,
live till the next Mother's Day, and then till April. And I always wanted her to be. I always told her I would help her with her crossing, whether I was in person or not. And then, um, and I had a really cool dream a few weeks prior where she was showing herself to me in a healthy body, like back when I knew her when I was 8 years old or something, when she played
mhm,
tennis and did aerobics and the whole shebang. And I was like, huh. And so I called my sister and was like, I think mom's gonna pass soon. And she was like, oh, that's wow. And she's just got put at in-home hospice. And I was like, oh, in-home hospice is serious. That's the one, that's where they cut you off, and
mhm,
still clean you up and make sure you're whatever, but they kind of like, they're like really letting you die. And
mhm,
so I scheduled a flight to come out really soon, which was on my birthday, like maybe the 24th, and then my birthday was the 25th. And I got to do some healing with her and cook. I think she still ate food. I think she still ate my food. I don't think they were actually cut her off of food, but they stopped giving her the medication or something like that. Like they stopped doing stuff. Maybe not super drastic, but it was definitely like the end of the line type of situation.
yeah,
And worked with her with the tuning forks in her biofield, cleaned up her physical and astral bodies, and just worked on so many different things that I have the tools for to help her with. She was always very receptive to Reiki and really liked it. And then with the energy work, working on physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies, um, and the astral, the third chakra cord is nice to clean up, and the astral body, kind of giving her a new one to kind of go off with. Um and what I feel blew her mind was just randomly volunteering on information, because she couldn't speak at that point. For a while you could understand even through the there was no articulation really, but you could understand her for a while. And then those last few months, it was a struggle to understand what she was saying. We had the chart for her to point to and all that, but it was pretty difficult to even like, yeah, that, but it was cool because I would tell her about it, Heather and Isaiah, and I could tell. And it was weird because she was asking that in her mind, like to me, and I was like, blah blah blah, and yeah, and telling her all different stuff. And at some point she slept, she fell asleep, um, and was the most relaxed she had been in a long time. as far as the caregiver saying, oh, she hasn't been looked this relaxed in a long time. Or, and I have that visual is not the best visual to still have, because that's exactly how she looked when she died. But that was cool
Yeah.
because I kind of wanted to be with her as she was crossing, but to be with her until she fell asleep, and then her just kind of going in her sleep at that point. I
Mhm.
woken up a few hours later by the caregiver and was told it happened. And before we stood around, and she was kind of asking me questions, about the caregiver was asking me questions about how my relationship with my mom is different than my sister's relationship with my mom,
Mhm.
and a lot more just I definitely show love in a different way, and
Mhm.
more affectionate, more caring in a way. Not to diss my sister, but
Yeah.
whatever. She's, I don't think she'll be watching this, but maybe. I don't. Hopefully, I doubt it. But yeah, it's truth. Uh, so that was beautiful because I felt like she did hold out till I got there, and that was special. Yeah, it was the end of April, so when we had a trance medium class where we actually went and looked, we called in the person working doing the work for you would call in the person's mom and have them look at when they first really connected to the to me, or to whoever, uh, with their heart, like full heart connection, and really was, or if they never did, or if they did, when did it happen, and that was really cool because she got to do a little communicating with how proud she was, and how I was not just right, but she had a hard time trusting she didn't let go of anything. She was kind of a hoarder, and so letting go of her body was a definite, like, yeah, you're probably not going to have an easy time letting go of this either. You can't let go of anything physical, materialistic in the world, and um, so it wasn't a shocker, but it was, yeah, I was very grateful that that was able to happen that way. I would have been with her from here remotely if I had to, but and did a lot of work from here remotely, but it was, yeah, a lot better to be able to be there. I always felt like my grandma died, her mom died in the mid 90s. That death didn't really affect me much, even though she was my babysitter growing up a lot. But I did feel like I was visiting from college and went to see her, and she was pulling at my hair like, oh, you couldn't cut your hair, and I was like, grandma, I shaved for you. What? She's like, yeah, your face looks nice, but your hair. I was like, damn, right to the end, give me a hard time. All right.
That's fun. So you can communicate telepathically, right? That's what you were doing with your mom when she couldn't speak anymore?
Yeah, I have definitely, I probably have the other senses more than the vision, but I'm still working on my vision. But I do hear messages or statements, or um, yeah, whether it be from my guides or their guides, or the actual person, I do hear different things, and um, yeah, always working on that to be better. But yeah, come
Mhm.
on.
And tell me a little bit about trance mediumship. What do you do exactly?
Well, we stay conscious in an unconscious space, so to speak. So we'll turn down our chakras, our lower chakras, so that we could, like, if you turn your the first, second, and third chakras down, so we can be more up, and then we go up and out, and you can kind of go anywhere, but you can technically stay on top of your head, or a few feet up and back, or go to the corner of the room, And then we make an agreement. We find a being to work with, a healing being, and with our stuff, we just allow them to tap into the 11 and 1 o'clock of the crown and our throat, and then sometimes also the third chakra. But we don't give them permission to have our full body. We just let them lightly tap into our crown, lightly tap into our throat to communicate. And then um, it's more the fourth year that we do the third chakra as well, which gives them a little bit better connection, I guess. Um, and and in our class, we'll have somebody kind of helping support it, like watching, helping make talk to the being and help make that agreement with them that they're going to just communicate. They're not going to open our eyes. They're going to do healings, touch and release, and so that's the thing, is staying out of there, because I do the communicating and the touch and release and different healings when I'm doing the side chair or something. But this is a time when you really have to stay out of your space and allow them to use that part of your space so that they can be the ones talking. And it's it's I'm getting better at it. It's a process to really feel, for me to really accept that I don't need to do anything, is for some reason sounds easier, but it's an interesting thing, because they do have they all seem to have like it's your voice, technically it's your vocal cords, but it does come through differently. You can kind of tell that it's a different being. And I asked the supreme being for the being to channel, because the supreme being is going to send one that's the highest and best for my match. Otherwise, there's a lot of beings that want to get channeled, and there's some trickster beings. There's like not always the most benevolent ones around. And
Mhm.
cut through the chase, I just have the supreme being pick that for me.
Mhm. So what other methods have you used to communicate with the other side? Because I know you've been doing it for a long time. Like you've heard things and seen things and
I think just connecting with them, going into a meditative space, and like say it's somebody's animal that they're curious if it's alive or dead, I'll send a hello to it, kind of. Um, a hello rose is kind of what it's called. But sort of say their name, or in the case of like an animal, I might say the owner's name a few times, and then say the cat's names, or something, and then look at a physical representation of their body, kind of like a cookie cutter version that's energy, full energy, but it out of all that stuff, there's a blurriness that forms into, say, the cat, the animal that it is. And the better people are at it, the more clear to distinctly it looks, just like their picture or something like that. And it usually does look fairly close to what the animal looks like. And then you'll see the third chakra cord, if they're alive, connected to an astral body, and their astral body may be really close or it might be further away, but that lets me know that they're alive. Because if you don't have your third chakra connecting your astral body, you're dead. You're just not, and you're not connected to your body anymore. um, and that's been validated each time. Even a cat that I was my dogs lamely chased off, and then the cat didn't come back for like 2 weeks, but I was like, no, your cat's alive, like, and I'm sorry, like, that it's my dog's fault that it's not close by, or it's not your house. um and 2 weeks later, so it showed up, and I was like, yes. um,
that's pretty
and then other
amazing.
people, and yeah, and talking, and I get messages even from the animals that they'll be like, oh, I was hit by a car, and I'll be like, oh, and one not too long ago was there was a lot of confusion over to why it's left. And I was just like, are there horses around you? Because it wants to be a horse. And she's like, yeah, there's a lot of horses in my area. And I was like, I think it checked him out, and I think it wants to be a horse now. And so it just felt complete with, you know, even though it should have lived a long more time, had a lot more life years in it, it just it was like, I want to give that a try. And it was an old friend of hers anyway, as far as being a pet from another life. So it wanted to get to experience her energy again, did. Um, and I guess that there's certainty behind stuff and uncertainty, and can't always be 100% correct with everything, but there's always some validation with things. And
Mhm.
um, yeah, I was glad. Man, I didn't even tell this person that, but a friend's friend in Denver got their car stolen with the dog in it. And I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like, it was bad enough at the car, but when you start adding a dog taken with the car, it was just like, no.
Mhm.
So I just looked for my own, I don't know, not for my own sake, but if I can get any information, and I at least got that it was alive. And by the time it was the next day that I saw that the dog was actually back with them, that I was like, oh well, I don't even need to say anything at this point, because yeah, so obviously it's there. But it's nice to have that assurance, I would think, or something, and just in case, because there's definitely been other people that have been like, no, it's gone, like, and they didn't want to believe me, and still try to hold on, and still asked other psychics, still asked other mediums, because they just
Mhm.
accept the fact that it wasn't. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
you're in your own process and your own timeline of how you can process and how you can accept information, so it's not my business.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that's really hard is so many people lose their beloved pets. They just disappear and they don't have that closure. It's kind of like a sudden death as well, where people have a really hard time processing that. And they do reach out to a lot of psychics and mediums for that kind of information so they can start the process of letting go. So that's so hard. Yeah, sudden anything, sudden changes with certain beings being in our life or not.
Yeah, Puff's brother Tila escaped one night at 10 o'clock at night, and then wouldn't come back in, and refused to come in. And he escaped when the dogs got out, and then he never came back. And that was weird for him. It was weird for him to actually even want to go out at night, like, because I think he liked going out, but he always came back in. And it was weird that he was so insistent and rushed the door. And then that next morning, there was an owl hooting in the tree right at my neighbor's yard. And I was like, oh man, that's a really bad sign. Because not, I mean, I know owls represent death in different ways in a lot of people's minds on animal totem, but it's usually death of a belief, or death of something that's not serving you, and that transformation stuff. But it is also technically death as well. And I knew this owl wasn't just was telling me more, like that it actually, I really felt like it ate it. And it did never turn up in any of the roadkill. I think I got a ride from a cop and even asked him if he had seen a heard of any cats being picked up in the area from roadkill or anything like that, and he hadn't. And obviously he was nowhere. And yeah, that was sudden. Kush died suddenly. And I thought it was an eagle or some an animal that ate her.
Mm-hmm.
Cassidy, Samson's brother, he liked eating birds. And so and he didn't like coming in. He was the one that I had to show him pictures of dying. I was like, this is what can happen. And because animals work in pictures, so if you give them visuals of stuff, like, this could happen to you if you're insisting on staying out here, but you're also happy out here, so I don't want to mess with your happiness. But can't get you out of that bush. I can't get you out of, I can't even barely find you at night. And
Mm.
but he ended up getting e- eaten by something, I think. More so, Sly, one of my very first cats, was the only one hit by a car. All the other ones, I think, were eaten.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Jabu got hit by a car. Uh, yeah, otherwise, it was very much felt like they got eaten. And definitely, there was never any turn up of anything of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's interesting. You were bringing up earlier reincarnation, like a cat wanting to be a horse. So they leave this life and come back as a horse. I think a lot of people don't think about reincarnation with pets as much as they do with humans, if they do end up believing that at all. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit? On
Well,
reincarnation?
I've read. I'm open to the fact that they can be almost anything, but as far as I have heard that they can come back as any of those can interchange. A cat can be a horse or a dog or another cat or a bird. Um, and then I don't know if birds are quite connected, but I feel like there's pet bird stuff, and I do feel like the pet bird type situation is what I'm referring to. Um, but I always kept it more to cats, dogs, and horses. And I used to joke with Harpua. I'd be like, "Hey, when you want to come back, you want to be a cat?" And he'd be like, "No, never." He hated cat. Like he cuddled with our cats, so he loved cats. But he also hated them. Like, and I don't think he liked. He definitely didn't want to be one. But he said he'd be another dog. And when I asked him about being a horse, he was like, like he even made some sort of weird sound and was like, "Yeah, totally, I'd totally be a horse." And so I had been calling him back in a body, and couldn't was turning down people's dogs that summer, that people, and perfectly good dogs. There are some choice breeds mixes that I'd be like, "Oh, that sounds like a great dog, but I'm not ready for a dog yet." And um, yeah, I'm not ready. I don't want a dog right now. And then all of a sudden, when my friend was in the store with, um, being asked if he wants to one of the puppies of this litter, and I was like, "You talking about you talking about that puppy you had in here the other day?" And they're like, "No, her brother." And I was like, "Oh." And he's like, "You want to meet him?" And I was like, I, he's like, "I live right here. I'm a couple minutes away. Just come check him out." And I was like, "All right." And so I went over there, and then, and I was just like, "Wait, why are you getting rid of this puppy?" And he's like, "Because we just, we're keeping this one, and we got the mom, and the guy I told him to is in jail or something." And he, or maybe that was the Frodo story, and he wasn't. Maybe he didn't have maybe he just didn't have a, yeah, maybe he just didn't get rid of this one yet and still had the puppy. I think that was the situation. I was just like, "Well, what do you want for me?" He's like, "Just give me like $20 for food for his sister." And I was like, "I'll be right back." And went to the bank machine, got 20, but gave him $20 and was like, "Damn." And then came back with little Buddha. And that's part of, he could have had there was all sorts of different names that I was contemplating, but the fact that there was some sort of weird thing pretty early on that I realized it was Harpua, that I was like, "Your name's going to be Buddha." Um, and then and he looks like a black and white version of him in a way, that's gone to astral school, that learned a couple things on the other side, and is very much my familiar as far as that goes. He's spent almost every Reiki attunement with me in the room near the person, almost every single healing. And now at the gongs, and he chooses to leave sometimes with because of the gongs, or too much. He's actually handled a lot of the sound healing and bowls and everything, and does handle the gongs, but it's, I think at some point he's just like, "I'm cool, I'm going back downstairs," and then might come back down to lay down, just knowing that And so I always felt like he holds space for me. And and although sometimes I put protection over him, I really feel like he's just dialed in and like doesn't always need extra anything that way. Besides the fact that I'm also getting it out of the room with roses, using roses by the table or something to vacuum out any unwanted sick energy. I don't leave it in the room anyway. That goes down to the center of the earth. So then the guy was just an acquaintance, just somebody I saw in town, and so he was like, "Ah, you're doing so well with that dog. You want one from the next litter?" And I was like, "Yes," and thought knew that Frodo had passed. Um, I guess a few years before that, a couple years before that. This had been a few years after Harpua died. It wasn't until like I don't. Buddha was born in 2009, and I guess it was the October of 2009 that I got him. Uh, and he had died in 2007. And then Frodo died the next year, and then so this was like the year later as well that I was getting that he told me he had a litter, and I was like, oh, I definitely want a dog from that litter. And so then I would talk to Frodo and be like, Frodo, I found you a body. I found you this litter to come in on. Just get into any of those dogs, and I'll connect with you, and we'll make it happen. And then he showed up like months later, or I ran into him months later. He's like, yeah, sorry, man, I'm gonna give him to somebody I'm better friends with. And I was like, okay. And then I came to some quick acceptance that, well, although I had my expectations up and was got all excited, I think that at least maybe he wasn't going to be in him. So I wouldn't want that anyway then necessarily, because I'm really seeking Frodo to come back.
Mhm.
Uh, Even though Frodo was definitely on the astral, helping protect me a lot and be with me in different ways, he had his own experiences to do in their own, and who knows what he. There's no time and space on the astral; it's only here, so they can go through a lot of experiences, I think, pretty fast. But then that dude showed up at my house again in October, the next October, with or it might have been 2 Octobers, maybe one or 2 Octobers later. It might have been 2 Octobers later. I have to do the math. Um, Showed up like Friday night at 10 o'clock at night, and this isn't the 90s anymore. People don't just show up at your house, like I was just like, who the hell's knocking on my door? And here's this dude with the puppy. He's like, you still want the puppy? I got to go to Texas in the morning, and that other person doesn't want him. And I was like, yeah. And so I really knew that was really felt strongly that that was Frodo, and we had already talked about what his name was long before he even got the body, and he wanted to be Baloo. So I was like, your name's now Baloo. Uh, yeah, and then it's cool because there's there's different. They have a different personality because they're a different in a different body. They have a different body going on, and they have a different stuff, but the soul essence is there's a lot of there's a lot of just similarities in my opinion. And and it doesn't matter if I'm wrong. I know I'm confidently right with I guess I feel right with both, definitely with Buddha. um with Baloo, I'm pretty confident that it is. I guess I can check in more. I guess I have checked in and always pretty much feel he is. But then I always look at that. There's so many dogs that need bodies and so many dogs that are awesome. And it makes me sad when people don't want to experience the grief again and not get another dog. And I'm always like, oh, that's not what the dog would want. If you really want to honor the dog, they'd want you to share your immense love for dogs and how good of a dog owner you are and how good of a buddy you are to dogs, and get another one. And like they bring you, that one brought you joy, and that one brought you unconditional love, and that one did all this, and like you're not doing anything by not getting another one. Like unless you can't afford it or can't have it. And I
Mhm.
don't get scared about people who have to get rid of them for moving or something, or because allergies, and it's like, no, allergies could be worked on too, technically, like
Yeah.
tolerance issues that you got or other stuff. And the
Hmm.
no judgment, that it sounds judgmental, but yeah.
Oh, I have experience with it though. I used to be allergic to cats and
Mm,
I was able to purge that. And it was a really bad allergy to where my eyes would swell up and I would just be itchy all over.
same.
Yeah.
My roommate's cats. I used to get the puffy eyes and itchy eyes, and then Mocha taught me that I actually really loved cats, because at first I got a cat for the mice,
Hmm.
and I wasn't really, and then and she would just like cuddle me, purr, lick my. I had a bald head when I got her, and I remember her just like grooming me all the time, and I fell in love with her, like to where I suddenly loved cats like a lot, like. And I just didn't grow up with cats. I didn't know them. They're always standoffish, and I was like meh. But then once you actually have a cat and get to know them, it's a whole different ball game.
I
Their
agree.
loves. I mean, this little one is ridiculous. I love her. Just purrs, does her little biscuits, just stretches out her hands, does the head nudging all the time. Like
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah, it's funny you told that story about the bald head and being licked on your bald spot. That's what happened with my dad and how he fell in love with one of my cats. It was actually Fee
No,
that he fell in love with, and he would just sit on the couch and she would just lick his bald spot.
yeah, if she got to my forehead or something, I'd be like, no, 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 go back to where I can handle it, because that is pretty sandpapery tongue.
Yeah, it is.
There, it's like there's no sense, not the same sensitivity as your face.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true.
Purring, like I used to love when she would cuddle and just purr, and if I really tuned in, it just was like, and I'd be like, man, you're like a jazz drummer. Like this is crazy. Like you would just have the coolest beats going on, and alternate. And
Hmm.
this is a little per monster too.
I find cats to be so healing. Like they really provide healing for people. Because I've over the time, probably over the past 10 years, I've had issues, or not so much anymore, but I had a lot of panic attack issues. And I felt like whenever I pet my cats, they would just heal me. They would like transform that energy. So it's
Yes.
really special.
Whereas feel dogs try to, but I feel like the dogs take on the energy and it
Yeah.
actually harms them. And that's one of the things I felt guilty with Frodo, is I used to think like he took my sick energy, my sad energy, and couldn't transform it.
Yeah.
Like the cats just, they transform it, they send it back to source, they purr it out, they're just they're dialed in a different way. I feel I don't really worry about that as much, or just because I've never Mocha was straight up 18 and a half when she died. She was old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like feel like I did anything.
Hmm.
But that was hard after that long too. I mean, that's a long time to be together.
It is.
And I get it as far as like being like, ooh, it's grief for the amount of love and joy. That is a lot of grief. But I think that's one of the things that people really need to learn, is to really release it's okay to have the grief, and it's okay to be sad, and it's okay, but it's good to really express it or get it out. And a lot of people don't want to talk about their stories after a while because people are sick of hearing it. So it is helpful to actually go hug a tree and ask it to take your energy, or
Hmm.
the different tools to pull it out of your system. I mean, even just peeing it out. I used to pee out frustration, anger, and resentment. And grief's another thing you can technically pee out. And then when you drink, imagine sprinkling joy and amusement and laughter into that water, and then drinking it and kind of replacing it,
Hmm.
or grounding it out. The grounding tube at your hips that goes down to the center of the earth, attached at the hips, and aura tucked into it and all. And just letting anything that's not serving you go down to the center of the earth, whether it be other people's energies, other people, or your own grief or sadness or anger, just anything that's not going to, you don't need at present time. We do carry it in our energetic sheath, in our mental emotional field, in our body, in our fat cells. There's all sorts of stuff that we end up carrying. You send it down, let it flush down to the center of the earth, even if you have to make a flushing sound to help have there be some sort of like extra imagination of flushing it, and then putting a golden sun above your head, imagining this and then filling it with what you want, and I always put joy, amusement, laughter up there, whether I'm looking, you might want clarity, ease and grace, understanding, enthusiasm, and anything. I mean, you can go into prosperity and abundance and all that, but as far as what we're talking about, it's really just bringing in joy and amusement and like courage or motivation or enthusiasm, enthusiasm for, and the happiness for it all, happiness to allow yourself to be happy and to actually have joy or laughter in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean you're not honoring the person by not holding on to your grief, because you'll eventually be able to talk about it without crying. I mean, I've teared up a little here because I was like, I know if I would just be like bawling the whole time, or if I'd be like, no, that's probably, there's a lot of subjects I could actually, I've come this far on that it's like just sort of matter of fact at this time. And sometimes if it's still, if we haven't fully processed or released everything, you do talk about stuff, and you do feel it in your body. You do feel that same traumatic whatever you experienced the first time, that makes it suck, makes it harder to feel like so in that regards, I can understand why people do have a hard time loving again, opening their heart again. And I guess that goes into the lungs, your heart and lungs. And that's another thing when you're grieving, to really honor your lungs and to try to breathe more, do herbs that are helpful for the lungs, breathe with the pine trees, take walks, expand your chest, breathe into your belly, learn different breathing techniques, because we hunch over and we protect our heart, and our lungs suffer, or protect our lungs and heart, and like can close it off, and then people end up with lung issues, and or
Yeah.
they break a rib trying to protect their heart, and representing like this is your protective area over this whole spot, and you're
Yeah.
sort of acknowledging that there's unresolved trauma that you're still trying to protect at some level.
Mm-hmm.
The kidneys, because lungs and kidneys, fear and grief, the knees, all of that I feel are connected, and I feel like that all suffers after that time, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more susceptible to getting out of balance.
Yes. I'm glad you brought all of that up because a lot of people don't think about that. So, or ways that they can heal or ways that they shut off and close up. It's really important for people to be conscious of that so they can shift that space. Yeah.
Yeah, instead of just saying I've got this, I mean, because it will show up as a bronchial thing.
Yes.
It will show up as asthmatic stuff, uh,
Mm-hmm.
or just any kind of, yeah, just in it, and that I think it was that one lady who used to put all the connect. A lot of people put connections to ailments, but one of the things with breathing, and I always remember, is you're not enjoying the breath of life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's one of the things we tend to feel guilty about when we're the ones here alive, and that's what I went through as like,
Mm-hmm.
not common census or whatever you would say. It's a reality. You just can't. It's part of the processing sometimes. All that stuff they think you go through, the anger I mean, I was definitely angry with God at first because I didn't
Mhm.
even really, I grew up Catholic or whatever I did, and I do feel like there was some level of just being mad and not wanting, I dated somebody that used to pray, and I'd be like, "You can pray, I'm just gonna sit over here."
Mhm. Yeah, it's hard.
But then once I started doing Reiki and I realized my Reiki master was calling in angels and archangels and ascended masters and everything, and that was part of it, to connect with them first to help guide and heal the session. I'd be like, damn, I'm totally connecting with all these beings that I used to shut off because I was so mad, and then opening them up into my life and getting a better connection. Even taking Doreen Virtue's course, she sold out. I don't know if that's legit to say or not on here, but like totally denounced everything she believed in. And to
Yeah.
somehow, I I don't know who held a gun to her head or what happened, or she's still the same person, but it's weird
Yeah.
because my connection to them is just always stronger and stronger. My own guides and who I call in for whatever. That was another thing I did with my mom. Was I believe it's Archangel Azrael is the archangel that helps people that not only helps with grief but helps them to go to the other side. And
Mhm.
so even talked that out with her. I was like, you used Michael to help find your keys, or no, who was it? Anthony, Saint Anthony. She used to call it. She's like, get Saint Anthony to find your keys. I'd be like, okay, But then later, I was like, damn, that makes sense. And I used to call in Archangel Michael for extra protection, or Ashtar if I felt like I needed protection from aliens or something weird. It was nighttime aliens are real. Um, and, but yeah, Azrael was a cool one to have her connect with, because I just feel like that's extra empowering to feel like like trying to convince her that, oh, your dead sister's going to be there, and grandma showed up in my dream. I think she's going to be there for you, and you're going to
Mhm.
have guys help you over and help cross. Can only bring you to the one part of the tunnel, can't really bring you to the other side of it. You got other people
Mhm.
waiting for you there. I'm willing just to be like,
Yeah.
yeah, and you can't force anybody to go to the light either. It's
Mhm.
that it's just they have to decide, I think, what they want to do, and that's when they start getting those downloads, because they're starting to all of a sudden talk to all these beings, and there's a lot more clarity on the other side, because you don't have your body and your mind the same
Mhm.
way. I mean, you have your mind, your consciousness, but you don't have anything blocking your acknowledgement of reality when you're standing there talking to a being in
Yeah.
that space that's asking you, go to astral school for this. I mean, my friend thinks that my mom's actually was so impressed by the energy work that she wants to become an energy healer, and she's kind of learning stuff on the astral before she comes back, and that's
Yeah.
cool. That's
Yeah.
really cool,
That is really cool.
because I grew up with conventional medicine and being told there's a band-aid for stuff, or drugs that just push it down further and doesn't actually heal you, and that always bothered me. I think that's part of why I wanted alternative stuff that actually gets to the root,
Yes.
and really not just push it down so you experience it later, but so you actually can process it, release it, and thank your body for communicating with you. Like, why are you what are you telling me? Oh,
Mhm.
that I need to do this, or I need to communicate with this person,
Mhm.
or I'm not moving forward enough. Um, I mean, gosh, I just watched a documentary on Ozzy because I used to love Ozzy back in the day, and I just was curious. I was like, huh, wonder what wonder what this is all like. I'm just curious to see about Ozzy's life now. And then, man, did he go through some hard times when Randy Rhoads died. He just locked himself in a hotel room, drank, did a bunch of
Mhm.
drugs, just
Yeah.
ordered pizzas, and like was a mess.
Mhm.
And was his now wife, is the one that helped get him back on his feet, and to say, this isn't the way to be, dude. Like, you need to be singing and need to be bringing yourself to people like, and um, uh, and Randy Rhoads was, in a sense, helped him get out of his slump of just being kicked out of Black Sabbath, and helping him form his own band, being part of that. And then when his wife got cancer or something, then he went into another depression and drank his ass off, and
Hmm.
just became totally checked out. And that's one of the things that's really hard to do, is to not try to escape, to not just to, because if you're not feeling it and you're not in your body and you're not hanging out in your mental emotional field, and you're just you, and that's what drugs help, that's what alcohol helps, that's what all sorts of escapism stuff helps, but it doesn't really help you in the long run. As far as, it's very temporary, hopefully, because we can get very hooked and stay into that for way too long. And
Yeah.
I never did it, like I never went downhill as far as he did, but I definitely partied pretty hard to escape.
Hmm.
Definitely smoked a lot of ganja to just, you know, to where it stopped being fun,
Yeah.
to where it stopped being like some sort of recreational thing. I realized it was like a crutch to escape and to
Mm.
not feel. And then the more you get back into your body and you start actually feeling, and you're like, oh, you acknowledge the parts of you that are actually trying to communicate with you, and they don't, if they don't need to talk if they're being heard.
Hmm.
If you're, yeah, if you got stuck energy and you're not moving forward with your legs or feet or knees, it's like, once you acknowledge it and you're like, yeah, you're right, I need to move forward,
Hmm.
and it doesn't hurt. And instead of owning it, just wondering what it's trying to communicate. Pain in the neck, sometimes life's a pain in the neck, a person in your life's a pain in your neck, like you're being a pain in your neck to yourself, like what is it? But it's like, there's often burdens up here that we carry, and
Yes.
if you it doesn't mean they don't exist, it just means you acknowledge them differently and process it differently, so they're not affecting you in the same way. And then your body's like, cool, let's
Hmm.
go back to being flexible. A lot of inflexible people that have bad arthritis and stiff joints and all that, and it's no joke. Like, the more stubborn I start being, as a Taurus, we have stubbornness issues, but I like to think of it as persistence. Man, when I felt like I was being extra stubborn, my body started stiffening up, and I was like, no, 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 no. I'm gonna have to learn how to be flexible, because this isn't cool. I'm not having a
Yeah.
stiff body because I can't freaking be cool.
Yeah, I felt that a lot when I was stuck back in Texas. I had a lot of stiffness issues like that. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you bringing up all of that stuff. It's really helpful for people. All the information you shared today is going to be really helpful. And I'm going to actually put in the description of the show, I'm going to define some of these things like astral plane, etc., because a lot of people don't understand that. So that way people can have like more information on it. But anyway, we're going to wrap up today because we're hitting on a little bit over an hour. I really
Yeah.
appreciate you speaking with everyone today and with me. And I'm so blessed to know you, and I really appreciate you. Thank you so much, Sal.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you later, Sal.
Okay. Love you.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.